You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcast. I have Gary Millet, the founder of Kegenix, and it's spelled Kegenix. The website's the same, kegenix.com. So Gary, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Rich. It's very, very nice to be on your program.
Yeah, so what Kegenix does, essentially, my understanding is you make exogenous ketones. Is that a quick and accurate summation?
That's a pretty quick and accurate summation. I think that my partner and I, Rob Rogers, basically started Kegenix a long time ago, actually, 4 or 5 years ago, after we had really had great conversations with Dominic D'Agostino on this idea that exogenous ketones could actually be supplemented. And we essentially licensed that technology that he had developed at the University of South Florida, and we started commercializing that and turning that technology into an actual product. And that certainly in and of itself had a lot of challenges, but here we are today, being able to provide actual exogenous ketones that are bioidentical, bioequivalent to the body's own ketones, and away we go with brand new science.
So exogenous ketones are ketones not produced by the body, and they're ones that you drink, essentially, right? Either in powdered form or liquid form that you turn into a drinkable liquid.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And these are ketone salts or ketone esters, and what comes in the powder or the formulation?
Great question. There's generally speaking, you'll find the ketones come in two forms. One are basic ketone salts, where the actual ketone in the form of the raw acid, say beta-hydroxybutyric acid, is actually formed into a salt by using various cations, such as calcium, such as magnesium, sodium, and potassium. And those make that molecule stable and also ingestible with a pH that's acceptable to the body. The other form is, of course, there's something called ketone esters, which is really basically the esterification of that molecule. Usually has some other backbone to it, like a 1,3-butanediol. But the difference, and then of course that's delivered in a liquid format. But there are some fundamental differences between those. In the case of esters, you typically have to take a lot more gram weight in that particular product, and people have said you can actually get your ketone levels higher. And I think in the short term you can, but ketone esters typically don't have very much staying power. They usually exhaust themselves in a few hours after taking.
So how long do ketone salts appear to elevate a person's ketone level?
Well, they elevate somebody's ketone level a little bit longer than esters, and you typically aren't taking as much of them, and you can take them over more of a prolonged period. So we developed something called continuous ketone supplementation, where it allows you to take multiple doses of the salts per day and continually keep your ketone levels up. The other thing that I think, Rich, that could be very, very interesting to your listeners is that the D'Agostino technology has connected mid-chain triglycerides commonly referred to as MCT. But we connect mid-chain triglycerides with our ketone salts in what we would call the combo. And that essentially does a couple of things. One is it delivers the exogenous ketones themselves, but more importantly, it stimulates the body's own ability to produce its own ketones. So you get a much longer life extension to that state of ketosis than you do with, say, simply taking the salts alone.
Also, the combination of MCT oil and the ketones, what's the ratio, the approximate ratio you're going for?
It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. We have various configurations of that based on, let's say, for instance, if you wanted to concentrate on weight loss versus, say, you wanted to concentrate on energy. So we're in the process of building a very interesting array of products, oriented towards the ability to help people address a problem that they're trying to fix utilizing exogenous ketones.
Well, yeah. So what would be some of the uses of taking exogenous ketones? What do people expect that it'll do for them?
Well, here's what's really kind of magic about them. First of all, have you had a chance yourself to do a ketogenic diet, just by itself?
I haven't been able to do it, with the exact macros. I mean, I've gotten close. I've gone low carb and very low sugar for a while, high fat, but I wouldn't say I was at the 80% fat mark, but I experienced, significant weight loss, and I felt a lot better and a lot clearer. And actually been, using exogenous ketones for probably about a year. I have them once a day, I think it's about 14 grams. So that's what I've been doing. And, but I want to hear about, what other people have done with them and what the effects have been and everything. But that's just my experimentation.
Well, yeah. And so when we first got into this field, I decided to experiment with before we had actually transitioned the technology into a product. So I did do a ketogenic diet from scratch, and just to experience what that really was. And it has a lot of interesting complications, especially in terms of the compliance to that. And I think you mentioned the same thing, that you had kind of that experience. So once you have depleted the glycogen out of your body, you then go into that strange keto flu stage where for 4 or 5 days, longer in some people, shorter in others, but you get symptoms basically brought on by hypoglycemia because you no longer have glucose in your system, and your body is fighting and struggling to remember what the fat burning system or the ketogenic system, looks like. And it takes a while for the body to remember that, build up the necessary enzymes, and really start processing fatty acids or into ketones. And during that phase, people call that the keto flu, because it in fact resembles the symptoms of flu. You feel tired, you feel weak, you feel ornery and irritable. One of the beauties of exogenous ketones is it allows you to skip that entire process. So people can actually simply start taking exogenous ketones and reduce their carbs and reduce some of their protein, and literally enter into that state of ketosis that day. Like literally, we can put enough ketones in your body in 60 minutes to stimulate or simulate the process of ketosis. From there, much easier compliance, because they're doing, people who are really involved in wanting ketones in their body and wanting to have that state of ketosis want to do what you're doing. They want to take exogenous ketones. They want to do a low carb lifestyle, and they don't want to have to worry every meal, every second of the day, whether or not they're getting enough fat in order to continue that process of ketosis. So exogenous ketones give people a freedom that want to practice a ketogenic or low carb lifestyle, and they want ketones to help them in their metabolism, but they don't want the rigors of having to weigh and measure and all the things that are entailed with a very strict compliance diet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. It's people want to get into ketosis much faster than the hard one route. It makes total sense. What do you have any input on what happens if someone uses it just once a day on an empty stomach, or right before every meal versus right after every meal, or if they're not eating a low carb diet and they're still taking these ketones? Any data or
Great
insights
question.
or just
Yeah.
anecdotal evidence of what goes on?
Well, when we first got involved in this, Rich, it was kind of crazy because everything you read or everything you talked to people about was um, glucose is the body's preferred fuel. That was sort of a given when we first entered this field. Well, it's now been proven that that's not a given. In fact, it's now been proven that ketones themselves are the body's preferred fuel. And when your body has a presence of ketones in a level indicative of say zero point 0.5 millimoles per liter of blood, your brain, your central nervous system, literally sucks those ketones up. So the brain and central nervous system and heart are extremely ketone friendly. They love ketones, and so as a preferred body fuel, it really doesn't matter what state you're in to put ketones in your body and to be able to utilize those. You can do that regardless of the state of your glycogen stores. Now, if you want the benefits of exogenous ketones plus endogenous ketones, then you'll have to modify your diet in order to create an environment where your body continues to make endogenous ketones. But there's no restriction in terms of supplementing multiple times a day. We have a lot of people who utilize our product for athletic performance. So they'll take it either before, after a workout, during a workout, because they want to utilize the power of ketones as a fuel. And actually, if a lot of people will ask me the question, well, how would I compare glucose to ketones as a fuel source? And really, the simplest vernacular I give them is that ketones literally would be like burning hydrogen versus glucose like burning coal. So not only do you get a much higher degree of ATP, adrenal triphosphate, the body's energy currency, from burning ketones, but isn't it interesting that the body utilizing ketones produces 45 times less reactive oxygen species, or what we would say is free radicals, in the process of burning that. And so the choice of your fuel is kind of a life choice. For me, I've decided I want to continue my life with ketones. I've been in a ketogenic state or supplementing with ketones now for about 5 years. And the improvements of all my biomarkers have been remarkable.
Oh, so what's an example? What are some biomarkers that you've seen impacted?
Definitely your glucose rate. My standing glucose rate's 70, and normal's anywhere from 90 to 115, 20. The other thing is, it's very interesting how I have better biomarkers with cholesterol, better markers with triglycerides, and you'd think, wow, he's eating all this fat. How could he have lower cholesterol? How could he have lower triglycerides? Okay, since I'm a man, you end up measuring things like PSAs, and your scale of PSA is say 0.5 to 6, mine 0.78. And so just things like that, you start noticing the changes in your own body. The other thing I find now that I've become very, very keto adapted is that it's really difficult to not be in ketosis. So even if I do a carb cycle day, and I try to do carb cycling every 2 weeks, so I'll do 2 days of eating carbohydrates, working out extremely hard, and then I'll go back into ketogenic state. Even in those days, and I measure my blood continuously with a blood meter, I notice that the lowest I can get really with even carbing up is 0.4. and that's pretty remarkable. So for my body to process fat now, it's got all the machinery. It really does that uptake quite quickly. And my experience is I just feel better. The mental acuity, the ability to sleep less, the ability to sleep deeper, the ability to literally, and I play a lot of tennis, and so I noticed a lot of difference in my ability to have longer endurance. And by the time you get to the third set, I used to be pretty tired, but at this point in time, it's much less tiring.
Again, all right, so how do you take them? Do you take them, again, before a meal, after a meal, once a day?
Great.
What's your protocol?
Great question. Here's my protocol. My protocol is that I will take them in the morning before I do anything. I try my best to do intermittent fasting. So I will basically take my Kegenix at about 8 o'clock in the morning, between 7 and 8 in the morning. And then I will go through the day right into, say, about 2 o'clock, when I might eat some food at that point. It just depends on if I'm hungry. And then I will take my second dose just before I work out, which is right around 5 o'clock. So I'm taking 2 doses a day, one in the morning to kind of jumpstart everything, and then one just before I do a workout. And that seems to be a pretty effective protocol. Now, one of the other products that we have created, I don't know if you know this, is something called Keto Meal. We built the first ketone meal replacement. And what's unique about Keto Meal is that if you want to just completely substitute your keto lunch or your keto dinner, it has all the macronutrients and vitamins necessary for a complete meal replacement in that particular product. So you can just sub that out. So on the days in which I decide to just go ahead and sub that out, a meal out, I put Keto Meal into that. But more importantly, one of the fun things we've discovered with Keto Meal is all of the things that you can make from it. And as we make these things from it, it is really pretty remarkable. So we make pancakes, and we make waffles, and we make biscuits, and so on our website, we have something called Keto Kitchen, where it gives people recipes to make out of Keto Meal. So they substitute for the products that they're used to and they love. And at the same time, they're getting ketones. So that has become very, very popular. It comes in chocolate and it comes in vanilla. And I also make things like chocolate mousse out of it. But it's just a really interesting way to add to your lifestyle.
So what kind of comments have you heard around exogenous ketones? I've heard from various people that are self-proclaimed keto experts or keto doctors that they don't recommend exogenous ketones, or you should use them sparingly, or be careful if you're going to eat carbs and have exogenous ketones. I mean, I would think you'd have some insights or at least anecdotes from people where people have tried to use it either in the right way or the wrong way and gotten different results. Any comments on what you've seen, the different uses of it, and what's happened to people when they did it?
Well, it's interesting to think back through the fact that when we first started this, nobody had even heard of an exogenous ketone, let alone comments on what they've done for incorporating those like you have in the lifestyle. But as far as comments about exogenous ketones, we probably don't have enough time on the podcast to go through all of those we've heard. But there's a lot of interesting comments on this. So one of the things I will give you on your podcast is that we have started a very extensive 60-person study of exogenous ketones, and we've started another. And that particular study, the first one, is really all about weight management. And so we are literally going to take 60 people through various protocols of utilizing exogenous ketones for 8 weeks, and we're going to be measuring literally everything from weight loss to their biomarkers to glucose to ketone levels. So that study has started, and at some point, perhaps we should schedule another time where I can come on and tell you those results when we get those back. Because if you really are going to do the science, then do the science, right? There's a lot of anecdotal people. A lot of people testify, my gosh, I've lost so much weight on this, or if I take these, certain things happen to my body. What's interesting is we have not seen any adverse effect at all from people taking exogenous ketones. It's remarkable, and probably, Rich, because if you think about it, all you're doing is you're ingesting a product that's bioidentical to what your body makes. It's not like we're ingesting some new, crazy drug. So this is like something your body already produces. So it's not like, it's like taking glucose. There's not a lot of difference if you compare those two. And one of the things
what's interesting is you said the MCT actually, you believe it actually helps your body make ketones. I mean, because something that you take that your body makes, it could lead to a cycle where your body doesn't make it as much because you take it exogenously.
Well, that's because the goal you'd love to be able to have something that simply stimulates. It's just like, wouldn't it be great if you took a precursor and now you make all the testosterone you want, right? So by being able to couple exogenous ketones with MCT, it allows us that beautiful process of marrying exogenous ketones to endogenous ketone production. And that helps people sustain that ketogenic process. It allows them to literally kick that in because the MCT is converted in this particular process to exogenous ketones. So you've kind of jump-started that with the exogenous ketones. You're prolonging that with the MCT, and so you get kind of that two mode effect. And this is what people really want, is to be able to sustain the ketones that they're taking. They want to be in that state.
Okay. Any reports from people that take them before meals or after meals, or again, once a day versus 3 times a day? Any differences that people are reporting back to you on?
The people who actually the people who actually utilize ketones with intermittent fasting, they report amazing results. So if you talk about somebody who utilizes the product in the morning like you are, and at some point in time they have that 16 to 18 hour cycle where they're actually not ingesting food, it's amazing results in terms of energy and weight loss that we have seen. Kind of
so they report feeling just more energy for a longer period of time, or less hunger, or what kind of things do they report?
Much less hunger. They can get through the intermittent fast like a breeze, so they don't even think about it. And at that point, they really are in that endogenous fat burning mode during that intermittent fasting, and that really does accelerate weight loss. And I know for sure that the less food you actually intake, I think the higher your ketone levels go, and that probably gives people some additional energy and mental boost.
Is there any way to take them the quote-unquote wrong way? Or are you not able to even say that? Or, what would be an answer to that question?
I don't know of anybody who's been able to take them the wrong way. Simply because if you think about what it's made up of, if you take ketones, you can't possibly overdose on ketones. That's, like for instance, I'll give you an example. Your body has the capability, when it's in a full ketogenic state, to produce about 130 grams of ketones per day. So when somebody's taking, I think you mentioned how much you take, 14 grams. Well, you'd have to take
I've taken a number of Yeah, I've taken a number of different brand names of ketones, and the dose
Sure.
they suggest always seems to fall between like 12 and 15 grams. So that's about what I take is like 14 grams, 13 grams.
So that roughly represents about 10 or 11% of your body's ability at full tilt to make ketones. So your chances of making more ketones is very, very low. Now, one thing that is really kind of cool about the Kegenix product is we have engineered it with what we call quad salts. So you're familiar with what grass is, right? Generally regarded as safe.
Yeah, like sugar.
Yeah, I think that's probably not grass. But anyway,
Right.
the thing about that is, interestingly enough, is that the salt mixture that you're taking, let's say the combination of the sodium, the calcium, magnesium, and potassium, right? We have created our product around a perfect blend of quad salts so that what we're mimicking is your body's electrolytic system. So we have the ratio of sodium to potassium and calcium to magnesium that mimics the body's basic electrolyte chemistry. And that way, when somebody goes into a lower carb diet, you've probably heard this before, this is probably not news to you or your listeners, is that you need more electrolytes. Have you heard this before?
Yeah, I've heard that it could deplete your electrolytes and you got to watch out and make sure that you have enough. Yeah.
Exactly. So we engineered our product to do not only deliver the bioidentical ketones plus the ability to make your own ketones, but also a suite of electrolytes that allows your body to get replenished with the electrolytes. Traditionally, when you go out of a glycolytic state, you lose. So those three purposes were behind the engineering of what we're doing.
Okay, gotcha. I think one thing that's interesting in your formulation is you said that MCT is included. And actually, when I spoke to Don D'Agostino and I told him about some of the exogenous ketones I've tried, he said, "Oh, are you adding MCT oil to it?" And I said, "No, I for some reason I didn't know that would be helpful." So he suggested adding it in a certain ratio, and it did seem to have a stronger effect. I remember the first couple of times I had both together, I just felt like, whoa. This is like really powerful, but in a good way. So it's your formulation seems to be more ideal than perhaps others out there.
Spot on. That combination and getting the ratios right is really what Kegenix has really pioneered, and that's what we actually own as far as patent rights go, is to that specific type of technology that Dom did create. And so he was describing the technology he invented. And now what we've done is over time experimented with what exactly you need to put together in order to get the biggest bang for the buck. And that combination really lends itself to not only, heightened levels of ketones, but more importantly, if I haven't made this really clear to the listeners, it's the prolonged effect that you're looking for. If you're looking for a 2-hour jump start for athletics, I think taking the VHB salts alone are fine. I think even taking the ester, if you could actually stomach it, because it just tastes like jet fuel. But if that's all you're interested in is that short shot, that's great. But if you're really looking to support and maintain and prolong that ketogenic state, we've engineered our product to allow people that luxury.
So what is the recommended protocol for taking it? Once a day, 3 times a day? It seems like most of the brands say 3 times a day is the max you should do.
Yeah, we recommend twice a day, and because our product has the ability to extend that ketone range, twice a day is a very, very good protocol, and it allows for a very, very good extension of ketones throughout the day.
And then twice a day, before meals, right after a meal, when would be the most effective, you think?
I like it in the morning before a meal. That's my preferred time I take it, and I think that's pretty much what most people do as well, that we, at least our customers report to us. But again, it's really up to when you want to utilize that. Then I use mine right before a workout. So even if I've had a meal, an afternoon meal or something, I still will take it right before the workout. I get, that 3 or 4 clock. So take it 8 in the morning, I take it 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And really, it's really amazing how effective that is.
Okay. Well, very good. So you mentioned another product that I guess it goes into what, baked goods or other goods that emulate
keto meal.
A keto meal.
It's amazing. If we're ever together, I'll bring some keto meal, Rich, and we'll make keto waffles. And that's like my favorite, and just my family's favorite right now. And it's amazing. The lightest waffles you've ever had. And it's very simple. You take 4 scoops of keto meal, you put them in a bowl, put a couple of raw eggs in there. You take some avocado oil, mix it in there, a little baking soda, and you heat up your waffle iron. You mix those all together, and away you go with some water.
Okay. Well, very good. So what's ahead for the next 6 months or a year? New products coming, new protocols?
Both. We have really interesting array of new product coming. We got 4 new flavors. We probably have about 10 new products coming out within the next 6 months. And I would be happy to send you a product release if you let me know where to send that, and give your listeners kind of a heads up as to what we're planning. So we're going to do anywhere from doing coffee creamers with our technology. We're actually building some new flavors. I think we have 4 new flavors coming. We have a brand new formulation coming out. So we've been in the lab working on these, and we have a brand new formulation coming out in about 30 days that I think you'll find really exciting.
Okay. And then just one point of clarification. So, I've seen things called raspberry ketones offered, and those don't seem to be at all what products like this are. So I just wanted you to speak on that for a quick minute.
Yeah, that's a great question. We used to hear that term, Rich, all the time. At the very beginning, when we started this, people say, "Oh, raspberry ketones," and you go, "No, raspberry ketones really aren't a ketone; they're a phenyl." And raspberry ketones are generally used for flavorings, so they don't have any energy to them, if you will. They're not really a bioidentical human body ketone. So those really biochemically don't deliver ketones or are a ketone themselves. It's just basically something from a plant.
Okay, very good. I just want to make sure. All right, well, what's the best way for folks to get in contact and to try out the products and to ask more questions?
Just visit our website, realketones.com.
Okay. All right, that's the best way. Well, very good. Yeah. Well, Gary, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and thanks so much.
Rich, thanks so much too, and enjoyed that. And hopefully this has been something good for your readers or your listeners.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.